So welcome to the fourth part in our series. Again, the fifth video that you probably tuned into as a volunteer for the Savannah Craft Brew Fest. This one here, just to talk a little bit about beer serving, how we can be better hosts. So jump right in here. Hopefully address your questions, and at the end we'll give you some resources and further places you can look to get more information. A couple of terms that you should be aware of. You'll see these on some of the cheat sheets that we will provide with the various beers. Your clients, if you will, the folks that are going to come to taste, will oftentimes ask you. They may ask you what IBUs are. They may ask you what they mean. So starting here, IBUs is a term. It's called International Bittering Units. It's a rating of the perceived bitterness of a beer. The higher the number, the greater degree of bitterness, generally speaking. You can note that it's a function of balance. So if you have a beer that's got a lot of a malt character, it can seem to kind of mitigate or balance or assuage some of that harsh bitterness. So IBUs are a measurement of hop bitterness. The brewer can do that theoretically using before they brew by quantities of hops added. When in the brewing process those were added, they'll get a theoretical number that they'll have for IBUs, and then when they're actually done brewing, they can submit that to a laboratory and measure that analytically. SRM is just an abbreviation for Standard Reference Method. It's a measure of the color of the beer. Higher numbers generally is a darker degree and thicker or less light transparency, if you will, of a beer. Another measurement you might hear is degrees Lovibond or Lovibond. It's an older measurement, but again, higher numbers, darker value, darker apparent beer. ABV is alcohol by volume. It's the percent of alcohol in a solution or in the beer. Most beers are around 5 or 6%. You'll see a lot of the craft beers as the styles, when they get to those imperials and larger, the alcohols tend to creep up. We'll also talk a little bit about session beers. They're characterized by lower alcohols. They can be the same full flavor, but when they're working to sessionize those, the term coming from the fact that your session that you're sitting around drinking, you're able to have 3 or 4 beers during that point, whereas if you had some of the larger imperial styles, 3 or 4 of those beers might leave you under the table. A couple other terms: OG or original gravity. It's simply a measurement of the density of a liquid relative to water. What it does is it gives us the amount of sugars that are present in a solution. Some measurements to note original gravity are degrees Plato or specific gravity. Specific gravity is often measured, and you'll hear 1.0 something. Plato and specific gravity are loosely related until you get into higher numbers. By a degree of Plato is equal to 4 gravity points. So 1.040 is roughly 10 degrees Plato. Gives us an idea of the amount of fermentables present, kind of the potential alcohol that you would have in a beer with OG. Final gravity, or FG, is the same scales, but it's the final measurement of the beer after the fermentations happened. By measuring the original gravity and final gravity, what you're doing is you're finding out how much, what's the difference in sugars or fermentables that were in that liquid. Through that, you can calculate how much alcohol basically has been present. Obviously, the sugars are metabolized by the yeast and transform into alcohol and carbon dioxide, and predominant bit of that transmutation is the alcohol. And so, with those numbers, we can figure out how much alcohol is in the beer. When we talk about tasting beers, oftentimes you may be asked to kind of point this out to the people that are coming to your table. When we taste beers, we start off by looking at it before you even put it up to your face. Yeah, take a look at it in the glass. You know, what does the head look like? What is the color? Is it clear? Is it cloudy? What else do you know? You know, give it a little swirl. Is there a lot of carbonation? Do you see bubbles actively being produced. Before you take a sip, then, you've looked at it. Now take a smell. What kind of smells are you getting there? Note your associations that you have. Is this something, does it remind you of baking bread? Does it remind you of grandma's kitchen? Things like that. Our sense of smell is extremely powerful and extremely linked to a lot of emotions. So note those associations. That's where some of those styles can really form strong connections to you. Finally, you're going to take a sip of that liquid. Take a little bit and let it kind of move around in your mouth. Inhale again. Okay, most of what we think of as taste is often aromas that we perceive through the palate. Inhale that again. Swish it around. Note the sensations that you get on your tongue. They love to talk about the tongue map, and the tip of the tongue was one perception, and the back is a different perception, and across the sides and top, etc. Generally kind of debunked a lot of that tongue map, if you will, but you'll still note that you'll note sensations in various points on your mouth. So just be aware of those. Finally, swallow that down. What do you note? What kind of mouth feels and other flavors? Again, it's a process to taste that beer and experience the whole thing. We talk about drinking with your eyes as the first step, and that presentation is important. If you see something in your head that this is a big, thick, dark beer, that can kind of it can lend and can also sometimes detract from your perceptions, but be open to that kind of stuff. Be aware of it. Finally, you as a server or a guide, the way you can be a better person is a better person and a better server or guide, again, for this process for the people that are coming to taste the beers that you're representing. Have a taste of it so you know so you can talk about it a little bit with them. We'll have a stat sheet there on the beers that will give you a short description. Should note the original gravity and final gravities. How much alcohol is in it? Is it an ale or a lager? Is it, think about it. Is it malty or hoppy? Where's the balance? Is it heavy body or light body? Know that stuff so that you'll oftentimes have folks come up to you and say, give me your lightest, or give me your heaviest, or give me your maltiest. And so by having done your own little taste of the beers you're going to represent, you're going to be a better guide for those folks. Should be noted that it's a beer tasting event. Okay, we're here to have fun. We want to learn more about beer. We want to have the opportunity to sample a bunch of beers that we probably would not be able to afford to get 6 packs of every one of these beers, or might not have the availability to even find them. We want to have fun. We want to learn about beer. We want to help the people that are patrons that are coming in here. We want to help them understand the beers. Be respectful of pour amounts. We have the small glasses, and we have pour amounts so that everybody has an opportunity to sample. We're also, again, noting this is a tasting event. This is not a drunk fest. We want to, experience these things, get going there. So be mindful of that. Pour amounts mean that folks will have enough for everyone to sample. You want to be mindful, again, you're serving alcohol, so you have some responsibility for folks. So we want to be mindful of guests that may have had too many tastings. Okay, we want to make sure everybody gets home safely. If you have issues on that thing or any other issues, we want you to utilize the team captains, other supervisors, perhaps security, as needed. Again, we don't want to get people in trouble, but we want to make sure that that everyone is able to enjoy the fest, not being bothered, otherwise creating problems. So be mindful of that, again, as good hosts. Finally, this slide, just to give you a few resources. I introduced myself in the welcome section, but I introduced myself there on the bottom point. I work at Haverson Beverage Warehouse there on Abercorn. I'm there a good bit of the time to talk beer. We've usually got somebody versed in the beer culture that's back there you can chat about. But also, I cited the BJCP, the Beer Judge Certification Program, the bjcp.org site. Other sites that you can find on the web, just to name a few: Beer Advocate, Rate Beer, Brewers Association, Cicerone, Cicerone program started by a fellow named Ray Daniels, to kind of give to beer what sommeliers give to wine. So, that beer knowledge expert. So a few resources there. I thank you guys very much for your time. I hope it's worth your while. I hope you enjoy this. And again, if you have questions, should be some resources, additional links that'll be posted there on the volunteer site. But thanks again for your time. Have a great time. Enjoy yourselves, and we thank you for your effort.